Hello, everyone. On behalf of OTC Board of Directors, I welcome all of you to the OTC Live. The theme today is investment opportunities in Brazil. I will be the host for this OTC event, and my name is Carlos Mastrangelo, member and OTC Board Director. As a background for today's theme, Brazil is currently one of the top world oil producers and also leads the Latin America as top producer. Brazil has a dynamic and innovative industry and is experiencing an unprecedented transformation that unlocks great opportunities for international investors and companies in the oil and gas business. The Brazilian National Petroleum and Biofuel Agency, the ANP, will address to all of us and will present an overview of the Brazilian oil and gas sector, the forthcoming bidding rounds, and the open acreage calendar for 2021 this year. OTC has a great pleasure to welcome the agency's Director General, Rodolfo Saboia, who will address how it stands these opportunities ahead of us. And at the end of the presentation, we will have time for Q&A. Please feel free to send us your questions, and we will try to accommodate as far as time allows. And to introduce you the speaker, Rodolfo Saboia holds a bachelor's degree in Naval Sciences from the Brazilian Naval Academy in '78, a master degree in Command and Staff in '95, a PhD in Naval Policy and Strategy, both from the Naval War College, and a specialization degree in the International Management by the COPIAD, the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro in 2005 as well. In the Brazilian Navy, he held several positions, including Deputy Chief of Organization and Naval Affairs with the Naval Operation Command, Commander of the Surface Force, Coordinator of the Navy Refitting Program, and Environmental Superintendent of the Port and Coast Department. Since 2020, December 2020, the ANP director, he's the ANP Director General. Again, on behalf of OTC, we welcome Director Admiral Rodolfo Saboia. Director, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Carlos. I would like to start by thanking OTC for the invitation and for bringing me the opportunity to speak about the oil and gas industry in Brazil and investment opportunities. I will be showing a overview of the situation in Brazil. Like Carlos said, there's a huge transformation going on right now in Brazil, and that means opportunities in every kind of every kind of opportunity that a oil and gas company could hope for. So let's start with a formal disclaimer. Well, like it's been said, we're going through an unprecedented transformation in the oil and gas market in Brazil. And it is in every sense. First of all, at the E&P sector, we have a completely diverse sector that will emerge from the Petrobras divestment plan. All onshore and shallow water fields are being sold, as well as some great offshore post-salt concessions. And with these new investments in mature fields, development of pre-salt fields, offshore blocks in the exploratory phase, and a calendar of new auction, Brazil is ready to go production and take a leading position in the sector. This is what we expect to be happening in the next years to come. Also on the downstream, which is a sector that has where we have seen a virtual monopoly from the state company Petrobras since its creation in the early 50s. we're going through an even greater transformation with Petrobras selling about half of its refining capacity. So they're selling half of the refining capacity and 8 of their 13 refineries, which paves the way for a competitive and open refining market, which will, and that means a lot of challenge to the agency, because we're going to start to regulate a sector where we needed to speak to only one agent, basically. And now we're going to have in the future an unknown number of agents that we have to deal with. But this effort goes on the sense of making it a more competitive and open market with benefits to consumers. And also on the natural gas market, we have the first ever effective opening in the natural gas market in Brazilian history, with Petrobras leaving the transport and distribution sectors. A new legal framework has just been put in place with the new gas law that's just been approved, and a strong regulatory agenda is underway to create opportunities for suppliers and free consumers in distribution. An open season, as we're going to see further on, an open season calendar is set for this year. Let's talk first about exploration and production. Well, we all know that 2020 has been a tough year, and it impacted as a whole the world economy, and especially the oil industry, which responds very much in the same proportion to the world economy. It has impacted hugely. It has been impacted hugely. So, but Brazil showed some really good resilience on that, because we were one of the few countries that made a round last year with an open acreage cycle. So we took some emergency flexibilization measures in order to make safe for workers in the oil and gas market to continue their work with safety and health concerns in specific monitoring activity. And we managed to have a 5% of production growth, actually, on reaching those numbers on gas and oil, especially because of the pre-salt high performance. And that goes much because of the IMO's, the International Maritime Organization, maritime fuel rule that entered into force in the 1st of January, year 2020. That meant that maritime fuel, which were allowed to have a 3.5% of sulfur in its content, this limit was reduced to only 0.5%. And the pre-salt oil turns out to be a very proper one to reach those limits. So we managed to have some export records, especially because of this low sulfur content from the oil and fuel and maritime fuel, that the pre-salt oil is so good to. Also, we had some assets acquisition with 50 merger acquisition approved by Enp on that year. And we had 18 areas sold in the second cycle of open offer, like I said before. So I consider that we are very well positioned for growth from this year as the world economy ramps up again with the vaccination advancing throughout the world, especially in the United States and Europe, and also in China. We expect that and we have already seen that impacting the oil prices. So I think that we are really well positioned for growth. We have more than 15 offshore production units expected to start operations soon, until 2025. Also, the International Energy Agency has, on one of its reports, mentioned Brazil as one of the key sources of growth over the medium term. And we're working on having the right assets in the right hands. This huge ongoing Petrobras divestment plan, we're bringing new investors in Brazil, and it's already happening. And we're taking measures to increase competitiveness, as we're going to see. So Brazil is taking a leading role in the E&P sector in the world. So on this year, we're still the 10th crude oil producer in the world, with 93 E&P company groups, and 50 of them being foreign. We have a production of 3 million barrels per day of oil, April this year, and 131 million of cubic meters of gas. And we have reserves of 12 billion barrels in proved oil reserves, and 337 billion cubic meters of proven oil reserves too. And our forecast is pretty good. We have a potential to reach more than 5 million oil barrels per day in 2030, and that takes us to have the potential to be the 5th largest crude oil exporter in the year 2030. And the forecast is for around $50 billion of investment in the next 5 years. This is a brief timeline of E&P history in Brazil, starting from the point where we had the monopoly and what we seek now, which is an open market. It started in 1953 with Petrobras gaining monopoly status as a state company in Brazil. And that situation lasted until 1997, when we had the petroleum law approved. So from 1999 to 2008, we had 10 concession rounds with new E&P companies coming into the Brazilian market, E&P market. By the year 2008, we had the first oil in the pre-salt, and that led to an auction break. So in 2010, we had the production sharing law approved, and also the transfer of rights surplus law approved, and Petrobras then responded for 93% of the production in Brazil. In the year 2013, the rounds returned, but it was also the year where we had the start of a sharp drop in exploratory well drilling, and the number of new discoveries also dropped. In 2015, we had the oil price collapse and the investment reduction because of that. So that led to a sharp reduction on onshore and post-salt offshore activities. And Petrobras starting focusing on the pre-salt. And in 2016, we started a new cycle. It starts with the new measures to resume activities in E&P. In 2017, we had the new E&P policies in place, and we started to accelerate rounds. By 2019, we had this repositioning with a new strategy from Petrobras, with its first sales of the investment plan. And by this year, 2021, Petrobras responds to 73% of the Brazilian production, which shows a sharp decline from what we had 11 years ago, which means that we have a much more diverse and dynamic sector nowadays. So let's focus on these 5 last years, where many measures were taken to encourage E&P activities. We had in 2016 no longer mandatory for Petrobras to be the sole operator in the pre-salt. In 2017, we also had a bidding round schedule, which is very important. We had the new local content policies in place. We had new E&P policies emitted by the National Energy Policy Committee. We also had exploratory phase extensions for the 11th and 12th rounds, and the extension of the Repetro regime for taxes, for import and export taxes. In the year 2018, We had a regulation of local content waivers, the royalty reduction on incremental production, a reserve-based lending in merge and acquisition made easier, and a mandatory investment on merge and acquisition in onshore and shallow water fields, with a deadline for Petrobras divestment plan. In 2019, we had a new kind of auction being started, the open acreage. We unlocked the transfer of right auction. In 2020, we had the regulation of the commissioning of platforms, as many of them, the first ones which were constructed, were built in like 30 years or more ago. And this also means an opportunity of a market that is being opened by this decommissioning. And also the flexibility of resolutions by ANP as a result of the pandemic. So we had 12 bidding rounds from 2017 to 2020, and we aim to speed up that calendar of rounds, as we're going to see further on too. As the result of what happened in these last 5 years, we can see on the picture on the left what was the scenario was on the pre-salt polygon and its surroundings. We had a situation in 2021 that's pretty different from what we had 5 years before that. And also on your right, you can see what are the growth in number of E&P contracts, just for the major ones, for an example, how these numbers have grown. And we also have new companies stepping in on the offshore, like Murphy or Wintersall, DEA. And auctions held since 2017 have awarded a 90,000 square kilometers and yielded 112 billion reais in signature bonuses. Also, a new onshore market is being set up. A new onshore market with small and medium companies coming in is being established by the Petrobras divestment plan, supported by foreign and national companies and investors. All onshore fields that belong to Petrobras are being sold. So this is a huge investment opportunity in these mature fields. So we had a number of onshore E&P companies in Brazil raising from 50 to 82. In the onshore E&P corporate groups in Brazil also raised from 37 to 55 in this same time frame. And these are some of the companies that are operating onshore in Brazil, in the Brazilian market. So the exploratory environment is increasingly diverse, as you can see from these pictures. We have 334 exploratory blocks, which from them 70% are operated by non-Petrobras company. As you can see on the onshore scenario, we can see that 97% of onshore blocks are operated by independent companies. And on the offshore market, we still have some big special participation of Petrobras in this market, but she's also divesting some of its fields of the post-salt, and once they're focusing on the pre-salt market. So this is also a huge opportunity for investors on the onshore as well as on the offshore market. We are very much aware that we need to increase exploration in Brazil. The COVID pandemic impacted exploratory activities in the whole world, so that it also happened in Brazil. And it looks like it has speeded up the energy transition. And there are much more discussions on that going on right now in the whole world. And it reinforced the sense of urgency in exploring our resources. So we aim to be attractive in this condition. One, only 5% of sedimentary area is contracted, and just 30,000 wells have been drilled to date in Brazil. This is too little. Net zero scenarios imply a drastic drop in oil demand. Less capital, and as less capital will be available for investments in oil and gas, the least competitive countries will quickly be highly impacted. And Brazil has seen a sharp decrease in exploration activities in offshore and new frontiers. Focus has been basically on the pre-salt due to the high potential and smaller carbon footprint on those fields. So that means that all being said, Brazil shows to be a fantastic geological potential, to have a fantastic geological potential still unexplored, with great opportunities for all kinds of companies and profiles. This is a print screen of exploratory activities and results, showing on the left the number of exploratory wells being drilled in this little more than 10-year time frame, and also the declarations of commerciality that have been made in this same period on onshore and offshore. And for 2021, we have a forecast of 45 wells being in exploratory blocks, 26 of them onshore and 19 offshore, and investments by the order of 6.5 billion reais. So we're taking measures to increase exploration activities. One, offering areas. This is very important to keep our industry mobilized and able to make plans for the future. We have this open acreage and 2 auctions planned for this year. Petrobras divestment plan in progress also encourages new companies to enter the market. 2, the onshore data for free. This has been made available by the agency on the internet with well data, seismic post-stack, non-seismic data, and also in other studies. This can be accessed and downloaded by this website shown here. We also have number 3, the BidSim, which is a governmental program to study and new measures to improve environmental licensing and study better fiscal regimes for future auctions. And 4, we are seeking hardly at the agency to improve the regulatory environment with red tape reduction, rule simplification, and regulatory measures in accordance with the new gas law that has just been approved in Brazil. So Brazil has great opportunities in right this year auctions. First of all, we have the 17th round of concessions scheduled to happen in October 7th, with opportunities at the Campos, Pelotas, Potiguar, and Santos basins, and also pre-salt opportunities beyond 200 nautical miles. We also have scheduled for December 17th the transfer right surplus round for Atapu and Sepia pre-salt fields with 12 billion barrels of oil in place. Atapu is already in production, which started in May this year, and Sepia's first oil is scheduled for this year too. Also important on that aspect is that technical and economical parameters have been approved by the National Energy Policy Committee. Well, we have a huge number of opportunities in the open acreage. It allows to the market to decide when bidding rounds will take place and what areas will be offered. In addition to the 690 blocks that were already made available, we have recently added 377 new blocks to this stock of blocks. So, and that recent addition, we expect to spark this new cycle, which depends on the declaration of interest for any company, and we expect that to happen anytime soon. So in the production phase, we have 437 fields, of which 133 offshore and 304 onshore. And we have 264 fields produced in April 2021. We have a 2021 forecast of stable production, and we have a production growth sustained by the first oil of at least 15 new production units, mostly in the pre-salt by the year 2025. We have an investment forecast for that period that reaches 262 billion reais. And we also have a decommissioning opportunities of estimated 28 billion until the year 2025. Like I said, many of the first oil rigs that were built in Brazil are reaching their lifetime limit, and will have to be decommissioned. So we have a huge transformation with new operators jumping into the mature fields already in production due to the Petrobras divestment plan. And for instance, on shallow water, we have these two companies, Trident and Perenco. So that makes us believe that Brazil is home to most of the offshore projects under development in the world today. At least 15 production units will be scheduled to start operating by the year 2025, as we can see on these pictures here. So we can resume all the Brazilian E&P market in these three environments. For each one of them, we have designed different strategies. And as you can see, the focus on the E&P market in Brazil in the recent years have been mostly at the pre-salt, which is one of the best plays in the world. It's known as one of the best plays in the world. But we also aim to improve and change the behavior of what we can see on the picture on the right of the curves for the post-salt offshore and onshore. We aim to make those curves move more smoothly in the future, and we're taking measures on that because the pre-salt prioritization accelerated the decline of these two environments, and we wanted to make less longer those fields in the post-salt and onshore. So like I said, we had different strategic goals for the three different environments. We want to accelerate the pre-salt exploration and development. We want to, on the onshore, we want to revitalize the onshore environment, increase the mature fields recovery factor, support small and medium producers, intensify exploratory activities, and quantify the oil potential. On the post-salt offshore, we want to increase mature fields recovery factor and fasten exploratory activities in the new frontier basins. So in Brazil as a whole, we want to attract the right players for each environment, the right assets in the right hands. Just to give a picture of how much potential the Brazilian market has, we can see here in this picture that Brazil has produced only 10% of volumes discovered in its fields. We have a world average recovery factor of around 35%. And in Brazil as a whole, we have a recovery factor of 20% as a whole. And on the onshore, we have a recovery factor of 26%. So we have a huge remaining volume that are opportunities to have that must be transformed in investments in good opportunity for investors. Every 1% more of the recovery factor turns out in those numbers showed on the lower part of this slide. So increasing recovery factor is an energy policy goal and must be pursued, as it's by all agents and we are taking measures to reach that goal. Some of the ongoing measures to attract these investments in fields are shown here. First, the open acreage and the Petrobras divestment plan, which is in progress, and we want to attract new companies on the onshore and post-salt offshore. Two, we are taking measures like royalties reductions for small and medium companies with a new resolution, ANP resolution, put in place by July this year. We also expect to have soon a marginal field definition. There's a draft in preparation at the agency, and that is important to make clear rules for new incentives to those fields. And four, we have another start of regulatory measures like access to essential infrastructure, measures under REACT, PROMAR, and BIDSIM program. REACT aims to the onshore market, PROMAR the offshore post-salt market for mature and fields like that, and the BIDSIM program, which I've mentioned before, with royalty reduction on incremental production. So let's talk a little about the natural market from now. So this is what the natural gas market in Brazil is in the big numbers. It's a predominantly national origin, the natural gas we have in Brazil, mainly associated with oil produced in the offshore fields. Other sources include gas from Bolivia and ANG. Only around 40% of the national production is consumed by the Brazilian market due to the lack of demand and infrastructure and high gas prices. Much of it happens because we still have a monopoly situation in Brazil. So these are the big numbers on supply and demand for that market in Brazil. This is what we have today for the infrastructure for the natural gas in Brazil. We are continent size in Brazil with a very limited natural gas infrastructure, which we expect to develop in years to come. We had this new gas law that has been approved recently, and that's started to define a new market that is already happening in Brazil with first investors making moves on that market, like, for example, LNG terminals. We have 5 LNG terminals in Brazil right now and 4 new ones expected. So this is the transformation that we expect to see in the near future. We're moving from a past where we had a monopoly from the state company Petrobras, where we had a vertical integration, no open access, no competition in gas supply, and price set by a single player. So we're now having this Petrobras divestment plan in an agreement with the economic watchdog agency in Brazil, the CADE. They had an agreement on that, so Petrobras is obliged to do that. And we are having right now this market development with a partial unbundling, with developing an effective access, open access, competition in the gas supply to consumers, and price negotiated by players. And what we aim to have in the near future is an open and competitive market with a total unbundling and a diversity of agents with effective open access, competition in gas supply to all final users, and prices set by the market. So ANP is already taking a series of measures to regulate this new environment that has been generated by this new law that's been approved. That was a decisive step on that direction for a liquid and competent, competitive market. So we have this agenda for this year. We have a regulatory for independence criteria for gas pipeline transmission operators to be approved soon. A new ANP resolution on interconnection between gas pipelines, the review of the ANP resolution on tariffs, the review and unification of the UNP resolution on gas transportation carriers and commercialization, and a work group to address third-party access to essential facilities. And we already have an open season calendar for 2021, where we have not only open season for available capacity, but also for incremental capacity. And we must not forget that we have an energy transition underway. So Brazil is very well positioned, and it starts from a very good standpoint in the energy transition. We have renewables account for more than 40% of the energy matrix in Brazil. Emissions in the energy sector are lower compared to the world average. So that means big opportunities due to diverse energy and environmental assets. Also, Brazil is the second largest producer and consumer of biofuels and benefits from a long-standing, well-established industry. 70 to 80% of our automobiles are flex fuels. Brazil is one of the few countries in the world where you can stop by any gas station and choose by at least two fuels, gasoline or ethanol, eventually natural gas too. Since 2009, oil and gas production operated by Petrobras increased more than 40% without increasing emissions. This is very important. Petrobras goals are a 25% reduction in absolute operating emissions by 2030, zero routine flaring by 2030, and 40 million tons of CO2 reinjected by 2025 in carbon capture and storage project. There are some public policies like RenovaBio program that show the country will continue to advance in this environmental agenda. In 2020, more than 14 million tons of greenhouse gas emissions were avoided. 30% of the vehicle matrix is fueled by renewables, basically ethanol and biodiesel. 3% of the research and development resources from the oil and gas industry are obliged to be applied in Brazil, are spent on renewable projects. And the new government program, so-called Fuel the Future, has been approved by the National Energy Policy Committee, which means incentive to large-scale use of second-generation ethanol, research and development to encourage fuel cell technology, creation of green corridors to supply heavy vehicles powered by biomethane, and introduction of biojet fuels, and among other measures. So I'd like to end with some final remarks, which leads us to where I started from, by saying that Brazil is a country of great opportunities right now, and the first ones to get in will take the best seats. And we are very much aware also, we have many challenges, but we are very aware of our strength. Brazil have never breached a single ENP contract. We have a great geological potential. We have on the pre-salt world-class assets with low carbon intensity. We have huge opportunities on onshore and post-salt mature fields. We have past and future bidding rounds, including open acreage, and we have a opening market undergoing right now with the new gas law and etc., among other measures regarding an open and competitive market. So with this, I end my presentation. I would like to thank once again OTC for the opportunity And I will be glad to take now the questions if there are any. Thank you very much once again.
Oh, thanks, Director Saboia. Very, very, very good, and with a lot of insights in your presentations. Thank you very much. And when you mentioned at the beginning the momentum of the industry, how you see the challenge and how it is also at the same time opportunities for the industry. I really agree. And how resilient is the Brazil during the crisis in the past, and how it is how we see the opportunities ahead of us. It's really appealing. You mentioned twice that the targets to have the right assets and the right hands, very thoughtful. And I also agree with these appealing for the industry is such wide range of opportunities. However, I'd like to stress two questions about challenging questions about the momentum that we are today in relation to the environment. You mentioned in your presentation that Brazil is very well placed in the energy transition. But how you see the oil and gas industry being affected by the energy transition, especially in Brazil?
Well, this is the energy transition is a challenge for the whole world in every sector, and especially on the energy sector and in the oil and gas industry. First of all, I think that natural gas plays a special role in this in the transition. It is a kind of fuel with much lower carbon intensity, like, for example, diesel or other kinds of fuel. So I first of all see the gas market as playing a very important role in that process. But still, oil will be important for some decades in the future. I think that different countries will take different paths on that transition. So that means that some countries still rely pretty much on fossil fuels for the next coming years. I believe that rich countries can do the energy transition in a way that developing countries might not be able to do that. So we still have to rely pretty much on fossil fuels for the coming years until we find answers to questions that are not have not been answered so far regarding what will replace the fossil fuel energy generation capacity. So that means that oil will still have a future. We will have, by the year 2050, we will have around 10 million people in the world, and that will demand a lot of energy. If you consider just the amount of investments that are necessary to keep the nowadays oil production in the world, that will raise up to some maybe hundreds of billions of dollars, maybe $1 trillion of dollars. I don't know, but just to keep what we have right now, not considering any enhancement in the level that we have now. So I think that the oil and gas market still have some decades to come as the main energy source in the world as a whole. And like I said, we had the natural gas playing an important role in that sense. And also we have the low carbon assets of the pre-salt, which is very important to be mentioned, because this means that these are fields that have a future in the short and medium term. And that makes also us be aware that that brings a sense of urgency to the oil and gas market. So we are very much aware of that, and that means that we want to be competitive. This is what we want to bring to the Brazilian oil and gas market. We want to show that we have competitive conditions, and this might be a decisive factor for investors' decisions. So this is what I think will be the role of the oil and gas industry in the future, and particularly in the oil and gas market in Brazil.
Okay, I agree. There's an important role the next decades to come for the oil and gas industry. And the second question here is about related to the environment, is that sometimes the unknowns tends to be maximized more than it's needed. And it's also true when you are dealing with the investments. It's easier to deal with the known unknowns than the opposite. How the agency can provide some, how can I say, comfort for prospective operators in for investment in certain blocks that may be more sensible to environmental license?
Okay, thank you. Great question. To be honest, we all know that environment is an issue in the whole world for every activity, and the oil market, for obvious reasons, is also one of the aspects where environmental issues, especially environmental licensing, is an issue. But we try our best to make that. I mean, first of all, we have the legal framework on environmental licensing. So every main activity has its environment impact, and oil and gas couldn't be different. And it potentially is very much environmentally impacting. So we have to be careful with that. And so every society chooses what risks they accept, which ones they do not accept, and that is translated on the legal environmental framework, which has to be regulated by the environmental agency in Brazil, which is IBAMA. So we try very much to make that not to be in the way of all the oil and gas that we can safely, on an environmental point of view, explore. So we first of all try to avoid areas close to sensitive areas. This is always in advance to the auction processes. These areas are not considered even by the auctions. So we do not offer at all areas that are considered as too risky and too sensitive before including them on the blocks to be part of on the block stock of an auction. So and that doesn't mean that the environmental issues is decided then. Every field has to be to go under a process where the company should present a project for its exploration that should be approved by the environmental agency in Brazil, and it's the project as a whole that will at the end of the day say if that project is or not viable on the feasible on an environmental basis. So we are always taking measures on that, but we want to unlock every difficulty that might be raised on the environmental licensing in a way that makes that answer be made as soon as possible. And the government has put in place some measures to make that process happen faster. We know it sometimes take too much time. We are dealing with it. We're trying to make it shorter, and that will be a good sign for the market as a whole too. So this is what we're trying, and pretty much deal with the issue in a way that it doesn't represent a raise of the risk of the project of exploring oil in Brazil. We want to make this issue as small as it can be, considering all the regulation and the law, the law framework that we have in the country.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you. I have another question, different subject, about going back to the pre-salt. How are you envisioning the potential pre-salt beyond 200 nautical miles from shore? How the agency sees the opportunities, challenges, and constraints, if any?
Thank you. Well, this is something new we have here, because we're offering an area beyond 200 nautical miles, and that must be done according with the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Seas, and it's first of all establishes a 7% royalty that must be paid to International Seabed Authority. And this is subject of some discussion in Brazil of how it will be done. It's being dealt with in the government level right now, but we're providing some 3D seismic data on that for this area that we're including in this auctions. But the only way to really know what we have now, it's very promising. But the only way to be sure, we all know, the only way to be sure of what we really have there is drilling. So this is it's up to the companies to decide which they are aiming to go there, and based on the data that we already have, and I would like to highlight it again. It's promising, and take the risk. So, but this is, like you said, it's a new frontier. It's the first time we're doing that, and we expect to have it to turn out in a successful way.
Okay, thank you. One question here from the audience. Brazil has always been a country full of opportunities for the offshore opportunities and the oil markets. And however, the taxation laws makes it very hard for international companies to invest and take the profits out of the country. Has this changed under Bolsonaro's government, or is it expected to change? A question from Carlos Chiquito Berg in the USA.
Oh, thank you, Carlos, for your question. We all know that every country has its own law rules on that aspect. What we deal in the agency and the mines and energy ministry level, which are the ones that ANP usually deals with, is that we are considering what is in our scope of competence, which means that we are examining, like in the BidSim program, like I showed, we are discussing at least the sharing or concession methods for for pre-salt fields, for example. It's under discussion whether we change that or not, and other measures to improve competitiveness through incentives. But to be honest, I don't know if there's any measures specifically on the issue that you brought up, which is taking profits out of the country. Honestly, I don't really know if there's something being done in that sense right now.
Okay, thank you, and thanks, Carlos, for your question. I have another one here about the open acreage from mature and marginal fields. What are the next step in terms of the open acreage? How is the continuous offer of exploratory blocks?
Okay. Well, what the next step is that we expect that the inclusion of 377 new blocks, and we have some other hundreds of them being studied, may trigger the process by sparking the interest of any of the companies. With one of the companies showing interest in any of the blocks that have been shown, that has been contained by the block stocks that we are putting available. That this will trigger the process, and we'll start the next the third cycle, which will be the third cycle. This is what we expect to happen soon, but that depends on demonstration of interest by the company. So this is what we expect the next step to be.
Thank you, and we have time for one last question. We are seeing a very positive movement for incentives in the investments on brownfields, revitalizations, and congratulations for that. Is the agency also considering similar incentives for tiebacks of surrounding marginal fields into the main hubs?
Yes. We're taking, like you said, we're already taking some measures, but we still consider that there's homework to be done, and we aim at those homeworks because these changes that we have put in place the last few years have brought up a number of new players, which is very good, which is what we search for. This is all we have to, not considering the specific incentive. We have what we have on the ProMark program, which is a program that exactly aims at those assets. We have already, like I said, we reduced royalties on the incremental production. We are reducing assets for small and medium companies, and we are studying. There's a specific sector in the agency study even more measures on that.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you very much. Now we are close to the last minute. Thank you very much, the director, Enp director, Saboia, for your interesting participation. Really, Brazil is the place to invest, especially today, as the focus of the oil and gas old business. I express my gratitude to OTC organizers and to invite the audience to register for OTC 2021. Thanks for your attention, and this is the end of the OTC Live. Have you all a safe and healthful day. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you once again, OTC, for the opportunity.
Thank you.